Godzilla is what happens when you spend decades covering up a giant monster problem and then act surprised when it shows up uninvited. In 1945, the military tried to kill it with a nuclear test at Bikini Atoll. It didn't work. They classified that part so nobody would ask follow-up questions. This is the story of what happens when the cover-ups run out of road. They classified it, filed it away, and apparently decided the best follow-up plan was to just hope nothing else showed up. It took 45 years for that plan to fail. In 1999, Monarch scientists are in the Philippines investigating a mining accident that accidentally opened the cavern nobody was supposed to find. Inside is a skeleton the size of a city block. Clearly ancient, clearly not anything that should exist, and clearly something that should probably be reported to more than a handful of scientists with security clearances. They also find two giant spores, one dormant, one already hatched, and a trail leading straight to the ocean. A trail left by something the size of a building that nobody followed in 1999 when satellite existed. Movie science. In Japan, the Janjira nuclear power plant starts picking up unusual seismic activities. Joe Brody runs security there, which is already a stressful job without the ground moving. His wife works in the plant too, which the movie mentions now, so you remember it later. The earthquakes keep escalating, except Brody notices they aren't random, they're patterned. Something is producing them deliberately, which is somehow worse than a natural disaster, because at least earthquakes don't have intentions. Brody sends his wife Sandra into the reactor with a technician team to check the damage, which is the kind of decision that makes sense on paper and nowhere else. The rumbling is getting stronger by the minute, and the reactor is one spilled coffee away from exploding. She goes in anyway, because the plot requires it and because nobody in this movie has read the room yet. A tremor breaches the reactor and Sandra's team races for the exit before the radiation reaches them. They almost make it. One guy trips, and that's it. One guy, one bad step, and suddenly Joe is standing at the reactor door with his wife on the other side and no good options left. He closes it. 10 seconds later, Sandra's team reaches the door from the inside. The plant evacuates. Everyone else makes it out. The plant collapses. Sandra and her team don't make it out. Her son watches it happen from his school window, which is the kind of thing that rewires a person permanently. 15 years later, Fort Brody comes home from military deployment to his wife and son in San Francisco, which sounds like a clean ending until Japan calls in the middle of the night to inform him his father has been arrested trying to break into the quarantine zone. The plant that killed his mother is apparently still standing. Still sealed off, and his father has spent 15 years trying to get back inside. Ford flies to Tokyo, gets his father out of jail, and discovers that Joe Brody has not moved on in any conventional sense of the phrase. He has notebooks, he has data, he has the specific energy of someone who's been right about something for 15 years and there's nobody to tell. And he's right again, because the seismic patterns from 1999 have started repeating. Whatever the government sealed inside the plant didn't die, it waited. Joe convinces Ford to go with him into the quarantine zone to retrieve the old tremor data from their house. The report he's been trying to prove for 15 years. Ford agrees, which is either loyalty or the first sign that he's inherited his father's judgment. They get inside and discover the quarantine zone isn't actually contaminated. 15 years of restricted access, harmed parameters and official warnings, and the radiation levels are completely normal. Someone has been lying about the fallout to keep people out, which raises the question of what exactly they're keeping people away from. They find the data, share a moment in what's left of their house, and leave before a patrol helicopter spots them. But they don't make it out unnoticed. They get picked up and taken straight to a facility built inside the ruins of the plant, which is either deeply ironic or exactly what Joe Brody has been waiting 15 years to see. Inside the facility is a colossal cocoon that has been feeding on the plant's reactors for 15 years and emitting electromagnetic pulses that are getting stronger with every cycle. Joe Brody, who has been arrested and dismissed and ignored for a decade and a half, the lead scientist, looks at Joe's data from 1999 and immediately realizes this man has been right about everything the whole time, which is the kind of vindication that arrives too late to feel good. The pulses escalate past the point of containment. They destroy the cocoon trying to stop it, but whatever was inside has already been feeding on nuclear energy for 15 years. It doesn't die, it hatches. What hatches is a massive winged creature that tears through the facility on its way out, and as a partying gift, it releases an electromagnetic pulse that kills every electronic lock in the building. Joe walks out of custody because the door simply stopped being locked, which is the least dignified prison break in film history. He goes looking for Ford. He finds the creature first. Joe makes it out of the facility and onto a bridge, just in time for the creature to emerge directly beneath it. He survives, technically, but gets severely injured in the process. Of all the places to be standing when a building-sized monster climbs out of the ground, he picks the one with the least structural future. It shakes him off like a minor inconvenience and flies away. The next day, the incident is officially reported as an earthquake. 15 years of covering up a giant radioactive monster, and when it finally escapes, the best thing they could come up with was an earthquake. Nobody asked why the earthquake only affected one facility. Nobody asked about the electromagnetic pulse. The government has been lying for so long, it's become the default setting. Zara and Ford end up on a US Navy aircraft carrier, part of a task force assembled to track the creature. The military's plan at this point is to find it, which is the easy part, and then figure out the rest, which is not. The creature gets officially designated as Muto, massive unidentified terrestrial organism. It is not terrestrial, it flies. Nobody in the naming community apparently got that far. They also don't know where it went, because the electromagnetic pulses it emitted on the way out conveniently disabled everything they would normally use to track something the size of a skyscraper. Joe then dies from his injuries. Zara and Graham fill Ford in on an actual history. The 1945 nuclear tests ran experiments. They were attempts to kill Godzilla. They didn't work. The military classified their part and rebranded it as science. Mutos and Godzilla both feed on radiation. It's their primary food source, and they've been living in the planet's core where the natural radiation is sufficient. Humanity spent 60 years sitting on top of them and calling it geology. Project Monarch exists specifically to track Godzilla and anything like it. A secret scientific organization dedicated to monitoring creatures the government officially insists doesn't exist. The meltdown at Janjira wasn't a nuclear accident. The Muto caused it, drawn to the planet as a food source, and then stayed there for 15 years, quietly feeding while the government built a containment facility around it, and told everyone the area was eradicated. Joe Brody spent 15 years being called crazy for knowing something was wrong. Turns out he accurately predicted the behavior of a creature he didn't know existed, using data nobody believed. From inside the grief he never got over. Fall tells them one more thing. Joe had been tracking signals. The Muto wasn't just moving, it was communicating, sending out pulses the way bats use echolocation, except on a scale that crosses ocean floors. His debrief done, Ford boats the helicopter home. Serizawa, meanwhile, holds his theory that Godzilla isn't the threat. That Godzilla is the mechanism nature uses to correct itself when something gets out of balance. Then, while Ford is still in the air, something answers the Muto's signal. The Muto attacked the Russian nuclear submarine and dragged it to Hawaii to eat the warheads, which is either terrifying or impressively practical depending on your perspective. A military team moves in on the ground, which raises the immediate question of what exactly a normal bullet is supposed to do to something that just carried a submarine across the Pacific. They send jets too, forgetting that they already established this creature emits EMPs. The jets go down, the city goes dark, except for one shot on the coastline in the background where the lights are still completely on, because continuity is apparently also a casualty of the invasion. Godzilla surfaces in Honolulu. The displacement also creates a tsunami, which kills a significant number of people he is technically trying not to step on. The intentions are good, the physics are not. It's also the first time we see his full scale, and the movie earns it. He is generally enormous in a way that makes every previous monster look like a regional problem. The military shoots at him anyway, because that's the only setting they have. The lights go out across the city, presumably from the Muto's EMP, except they were already out and now they're back on, and the film has fully stopped keeping track. The Muto meanwhile finds Ford's train, destroys the track and takes a bite out of the carriage, because apparently one giant monster crisis wasn't producing enough problems for one person to be in the middle of. Godzilla finds the Muto and screams at it, which the world watches through news footage because that's the level of access humanity has to its own extinction event. They briefly engage, the Muto decides it has somewhere else to be, and Godzilla follows. Honolulu is left completely destroyed in the wake of a fight that lasted approximately 90 seconds. Ford is now moving with the military, who are following Godzilla, who is following the Muto, which makes the entire armed forces of the United States the third wheel in someone else's problem. Serizawa pieces it together. The signal the Muto was sending wasn't a response to Godzilla, it was a mating call. Something else answered. Godzilla isn't the target, he's the threat. The Muto is trying to meet up with something, and whatever that something is, it's been waiting. Serizawa realizes the second spore from the Philippines was moved to Yucca Mountain in Nevada for storage, which made sense at the time. The military sends helicopters to investigate and discover it's gone. A creature the size of a skyscraper escaped from a mountain in Nevada, and nobody noticed until they flew out to check. No reports, no sightings, no indication that an enormous monster had recently left a hole in a federal facility. They arrived by helicopter, which means they flew over the surrounding area to get there. It was apparently fine, movie science. A second Muto emerges, larger than the first, wingless, and heading straight for Las Vegas. The team spots it through binoculars from their position, which means they can see it with their eyes from a distance on the ground. They arrive by helicopter. The math on how nobody noticed this earlier does not work, and the film has decided not to address that. Scientists determine the first Muto is male and the second one is female, as the second one is way bigger, and in nature that's always the case. They also figure out that they are communicating as a mating pair, which is awesome. They're trying to smash. Admiral Stantz approves a plan to lure all three creatures into the ocean and destroy them with nuclear warheads. The blast radius, not the radiation, is the intended kill mechanism. This is the official plan of the United States military against creatures that have spent millions of years evolving specifically to absorb nuclear energy. Nobody in the room raises a hand. They all just accept it. Ford volunteers onto the team transporting the warheads by train to San Francisco, which is where the models predict all three creatures are converging. The train makes it as far as a tunnel outside the city before stopping. The bridge on the other side is under attack. One of the Mutos is already there, which means the warheads, the monster, and Ford are now in very close proximity to each other, which is the opposite of the plan. The female Muto was waiting in the mountain, visible pregnant, which reframes the entire situation. She wasn't just looking for the mate, she needed the warheads as a nest. She intercepts the train and consumes most of them in one pass. Ford ends up in the water. Every other member of the team doesn't make it, because the script has decided he's the only one who needs to be in San Francisco. He wakes up the next day to a helicopter retrieving the one warhead she didn't eat, which is now being transported directly to the city where two Mutos and Godzilla are headed. Godzilla surfaces at the Golden Gate Bridge, and the military opens fire, mostly at the bridge. A school bus carrying Ford's son crosses it at this exact moment, threading through soldiers and debris and general apocalyptic chaos before making it to the other side right as Godzilla tears through the bridge, killing everyone else on that bridge. The timing is either miraculous or the film making sure Ford has a reason to keep moving. The two Mutos arrive shortly after, and the Air Force sends jets again, despite the fact that the male Muto's EMP capability has been established, demonstrated, and responsible for multiple crashes at this point. The jets go down again. The male Muto delivers the warhead to the female, like a grotesque engagement gift. She builds a nest around it in the middle of Chinatown, which is where she decided to lay her eggs, using a live nuclear warhead as a heat source. San Francisco is now hosting a monster nesting site with a countdown timer buried in the middle of it. Ford is the only person available and alive who can disarm the warhead, which is either a coincidence or the military having a very small bench. He joins the strike team and they halo jump into the city that currently contains 2 building-sized monsters and Godzilla, which is the kind of mission briefing that would make most people reconsider their career. They drop into the middle of it. Godzilla is already engaging the male Muto nearby. The female is still at the nest, finishing laying her eggs, until Godzilla gets her attention too. The window to reach the warhead opens exactly as long as it needs to. The team reaches the warhead and can't disarm it. The casing is completely sealed. The timer is running and the only remaining option is to get it onto a boat and out to sea before it detonates. They start moving it through a city that is actively being destroyed around them. Ford, meanwhile, spots a gasoline truck buried in the nest and makes a decision that is either brilliant or suicidal, depending on how the next 30 seconds go. He ignites it. The nest burns completely. The female Muto, who has just finishing laying her eggs, turns around to find Ford standing in the ashes of everything she came here to protect. Godzilla kills the male Muto by driving it through a building, which then collapses on top of it. Meanwhile, Ford gets the warhead onto the boat and pushes it out to the sea, which is the closest thing to a plan working this entire film. The female catches up to him before he can get clear. Then Godzilla, who was just buried under a skyscraper, arrives in time to intercept her, because apparently being crushed by several thousand tons of concrete is a minor setback. He kills her. Ford drifts out to the sea with the live nuclear warhead and no way back. Godzilla collapses on the shoreline from exhaustion, which is the most relatable thing in the film. Ford gets the warhead past the Golden Gate Bridge, or what's left of it, and the helicopter pulls him off the boat with enough time to spare. The warhead detonates over open ocean, clean ending to an extreme unclean situation. Ford somehow retrieves his son, reunites with his wife at an emergency shelter. The next morning, Godzilla wakes up, walks back into the ocean, and leaves. No demands, no territory claimed, just done. The media calls him the King of Monsters, which is the kind of title that gets assigned after the fact by people who were hiding the entire time. So after massive monsters level entire cities, we move to something smaller and somehow just as emotionally unstable. Yay!
Well, yeah, that wraps up that awfully long movie. Hope you enjoyed and let me know what movie you want to see in the future. Alright, that's it for now. If you like this disaster of a recap, feel free to click some buttons, or don't. I'm not your dad, so that YouTube knows that my videos are worth watching. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.